Hello and welcome to another of my video tutorials here in my Human Resource Management series. Now throughout this discussion we will describe how to plan and carry out an effective training program and how those processes are used to evaluate training in the context of the organizational strategy and how organizations assess employees' training needs. We'll also look at reviewing training methods and the process of evaluating a training program and discuss training issues including managing diversity and socializing our employees. Training, we need to look at the root of that word. Training is just an organization's planned efforts that they put forth to help employees acquire job-related knowledge, skills, abilities, and behaviors with the goal of applying these on the jobs within the organizations. Programs range from formal classes to one-on-one mentoring. Training can be on the job or acquired at remote locations. Just remember that all training should be linked to organizational needs and motivation of the employees. Let's take a look into a little bit more about what I just discussed and how we look at the importance of training. More important than ever, due to the nature of the modern business environment in our competitive world, we must make sure that we're providing effective training to our employees. Another importance of training is that change requires employees to learn new skills continuously and not just stay static in their roles. And the last importance of training is the growing reliance on teamwork and how that creates a demand for ability to solve problems in teams and often requires additional training so that they become better team members. Now, in order to assist the organization with goal achievement, HR professionals approach training through instructional design. Now, this is the process of systematically developing training to meet specified needs. Now, with training so essential in today's organizations, it's very important to provide training that is effective. Now, an effective training program teaches what it is designed to teach. You will know when you've gone through some ineffective training. An effective program teaches us skills and behaviors that help those in the organization achieve our organizational goals. A complete instructional design process includes the steps that I'm showing here. It begins with an assessment of the needs for training. What the organization requires that its people or its employees learn. Next, the organization ensures that employees are ready for training in terms of their attitudes, their motivation, their basic skills, and the overall work environment. The third step is to plan the training program, including the program's objectives, the instructors that are needed, and methods that are going to be used for the instruction. The organization then implements the program. Finally, evaluating the results of our training provides feedback for planning even future training programs. We'll take a closer look at these stages now. So as we look at the needs assessment, remember this is that process of evaluating the organization, individual employees, and employees' tasks to determine what kinds of training, if any, are necessary. Needs assessment should answer three questions. For our organization, what is the context in which training will occur? And then with the person aspect, who needs training? And then in looking at the tasks, what subjects should training be covering? Now, I talked about instructional design. Instructional design should logically begin with a needs assessment. The answers to these questions provide the basis for planning an overall effective training program. Management may observe that some employees lack basic skills or they're performing poorly. Decisions to produce new products, apply new technologies in the organization, or design new jobs should prompt a needs assessment because these changes tend to require some new skills for our employees. The decision to conduct a needs assessment also may be prompted by some outside forces, such as customer requests or even legal requirements that we need to meet. A variety of conditions may prompt an organization to conduct that needs assessment. The outcome of our needs assessment is a set of decisions about how to address the situations that prompted our needs assessment to be completed. Now, these decisions do not necessarily include a training program because some issues should be resolved through methods other than just simply training. The possibilities for action include offering existing training programs to even more employees that have already had the training, or buying or developing new training programs, and improving existing training programs so that they're even more effective. And you might come across a learning management system, or you might implement that into your organization. And a LMS is just a computer application that automates the administration, development, and delivery of those training programs to our employees. Managers and employees can use the learning management system to identify various training needs and even maybe enroll in the courses based on their permissions. The LMS can make training programs more widely available and help our companies reduce travel and other costs by providing such things as online training to the employees. A learning management system makes design processes more efficient and effective, and they can link to performance management systems to plan and manage our training needs, those outcomes, and even some associated awards with completing of the training. Usually, the needs assessment begins with the organization analysis. This is that process for determining appropriateness of training by evaluating the characteristics of an organization. Training needs will vary depending on whether the organization's strategy is based on growing or shrinking its personnel, whether it is seeking to serve a broad customer base or focusing more on a specific needs of a narrow market segment, and various other strategic scenarios. Anyone planning a training program must consider whether the organization has the budget, the time, and the expertise for training. Even if training fits the organization's strategy and budget, it can be viable only if the organization is willing to support the investment in training. Managers can increase the success of training when they support it through such actions as helping trainees see how they can use their newly learned knowledge, those skills, and behaviors on their daily jobs. Now, conversely, the managers will be most likely to support training if the people that are planning it can show that it will solve a significant problem or result in significant improvement relative to its cost. Managers appreciate training proposals with specific goals, timetables, budgets, and methods for measuring the success. And the more information we can give those managers and how it will apply to meeting their organizational goals, they're just going to increase their buy-in and help promote the training and its need to those employees. Now, following the organizational assessment, needs assessment turns to the remaining areas of analysis, the person and the task. The person analysis is critical when training is considered in response to a training problem. A personal analysis, this is the process of determining an individual's needs and readiness for the training. The answers to these questions help the manager identify whether training is appropriate and which employees need that training. In assessing the need for the training, the manager should identify all the variables that can influence performance. The primary variables are the person's abilities and skills, their attitudes, their motivation, the organization's input, performance feedback, and positive consequences to motivate good performance. Of these variables, only ability and skills can be affected by training. Therefore, before planning a training program, it's important to be sure that any performance problems result from a deficiency in knowledge and skills, so training dollars are not going to be wasted if the training is unlikely to have much effect on performance. Person analysis also should determine whether employees are ready to undergo training. Employees who receive training should not only require additional knowledge and skill, but must be willing and able to learn. Employees need to want to acquire that knowledge or new skills. We need to help create that culture so that they're willing to want to learn. The third area of needs assessment is task analysis. Understanding shortcomings in performance usually requires knowledge about the tasks and the work environment as well as the employee. The HR professional looks at the conditions in which tasks are performed. These conditions include the equipment and environment of the job, those time constraints, safety considerations, and performance standards. These observations form the basis for a description of the work activities or the tasks that are required for a person's job. For a selected job, the analyst interviews employees and their supervisors to prepare a list of tasks that are performed in that job. The analyst validates the list by showing it to employees, their supervisors, and other subject matter experts, and asks them to complete a questionnaire about the importance, frequency, and difficulty of those tasks. Now, for each of these identified tasks, the subject matter expert uses a sliding scale to rate the task's importance, its frequency, and its difficulty. Analysts then identify knowledge, skills, and abilities that are required to perform those tasks. Now, effective training also requires employee readiness. To be ready to learn, employees need basic learning skills, especially cognitive ability, which includes being able to use written and spoken language, solve math problems, and use logic to solve various problems. Employees learn more from training programs when they are highly motivated to learn. That is when they really want to learn the content of the training program. Employees tend to feel this way if they believe they are able to learn, see potential benefits from the training program, and if they're aware of the need to learn. They want to see a fit between the training and their career goals and have the basic skills needed for participating in the program. Managers, they can influence a ready attitude in a variety of ways. For example, they can provide feedback and encourage employees, establish some type of reward for the learning, and communicate with employees about the organization's career paths and future need. A readiness for training is a combination of employee characteristics and a positive work environment that permit training. This exists when employees are able and eager to learn and when their organizations encourage learning, and depends on two broad characteristics of the work environment: situational constraints and social support. Situational constraints are those limits on training's effectiveness that arise from the situation or the conditions within the organization. Constraints can include a lack of money for training, lack of time for training or practicing skills, and practice to provide proper tools and materials for learning or applying the lessons of the training. Conversely, trainees are likely to apply what they learn if the organization gives them opportunities to use their new skills and if it rewards them for doing so. Now, with social support, this refers to the ways the organization's people encourage training, including giving trainees praise and encouraging words, sharing information about participating in various training programs, and expressing positive attitudes towards the training programs. Support can also come from employees' peers. Readiness for training is greater in an organization where employees share their knowledge, they encourage each other to want to learn, and have a positive attitude about carrying the extra load when coworkers are attending their training classes. Now, let's think about what managers should do to support training. The managers should understand the content of the training. They should also know how training relates to what you need employees to do in an organization. In performance appraisals, evaluate employees on how they apply training to their jobs. Managers should support employees' use of training when they return to work. They should also ensure that employees have the equipment and the technology that they need to be able to use that training. Now, prior to training, our managers should discuss with employees how they plan to use the training. Effective managers should recognize newly trained employees who are training, and they should understand what they need and be able to help provide that. Managers should give employees release time from their daily work duties to be able to attend necessary training that will help the organization meet its goals. Managers should also support training by explaining to employees why they've been asked to attend training. When they explain this, it's not just seen as being told what to do. So the more communication managers have with the employees, the better support they're providing, and the resistance will be much less. If you're just telling your employees, hey, go to this training, there's going to be some resistance because you're telling them what to do. As managers, we should also give employees feedback related to the skills or behaviors they are applying to develop. If possible in an organization, it's great if the managers can also be a trainer. When the needs assessment indicates a need for training and employees are ready to learn, the person who's responsible for training should plan a training program that directly relates to the needs that have been identified. Planning begins with establishing objectives for the training program. Now, based on those objectives, the planner should decide who will provide the training, what topics the training will cover, what training methods are going to be used for delivery, and how to evaluate the training that was given. Training will likely be more focused and likely to succeed when planning is performed. Employees learn best when they know what the training is supposed to accomplish. Training objectives that are created should include a statement of the expectations, the quality or level of acceptable performance, the conditions under which the employee is to apply what they've learned from the training. The training objective should also include in that statement a measurable performance standard and resources needed to carry out the desired performance outcome. One of the obstacles you will face in determining in-house or contracted out training is going to be part of this planning process. Organizations can provide an effective training program even if they lack the expertise in training. Many organizations use outside experts. This is just, we reach out to those experts if we know we cannot effectively provide the training that's needed to our employees. This may require you to complete a request for proposal or an RFP and get approval for being able to utilize these outside experts. Training administration portion is done by an HR professional, which may include some type of dedicated training personnel or group of training personnel. Some HR departments have their own dedicated workforce that are all they're doing is training. And then training may also be, depending on the organization, a completely separate part rather than included into HR. Various organizations handle things differently, of course. Once you know you're ready to work on the planning, make sure you're answering all of those questions. Who will provide, what topics, what methods, and how to evaluate. Answering those 4 questions, if you're able to successfully answer those, then you've probably got a pretty effective planning portion done for training. Now, there are training methods that we've come across or you've probably experienced in the past, but really when it comes to training in general, training methods fall into broad categories. The presentation methods, this is where trainees receive information that are provided to them by others. A very good training, depending on the role, is going to be the hands-on method. With hands-on methods, trainees are actively involved in trying out the skills. So they're getting information and then they're applying that information. And then the third training method category is that of group building. Group building methods, with this method, trainees share ideas and their experiences. They build group identities. They learn about interpersonal relationships as well as with the group. Those are the three broad categories for the training methods. Now, training programs may use these methods alone, or in a lot of cases, a combination of these methods, wherever it's suitable for the course content and the learning abilities for the participants. Although the share of instruction provided online is growing, classroom training remains the most popular of these three broad categories. Now let's talk about classroom instruction and the way it's delivered. Usually you come across where a trainer is lecturing a group. This is when we are looking at classroom instruction. That is what most people are probably used to. In this classroom instruction, it could include some distance learning where you could have trainees at different locations. There could be the use of video conferencing. There could be some email or instant messaging that's used for this instruction. There could be some document sharing. So, if you're doing the video conferencing, you're probably using some web cameras. You might be using a webcam to hold it over top of something in case you're doing some hands-on you need to demonstrate. Now, in our classroom instruction, interaction between the trainer and the audience can be quite limited. So it's while it's the most used, there are other alternatives that we're looking at here for delivery method. So the first one we'll look at is that computer-based training. With the computer-based training, the first thing that pops in most people's head is e-learning, which stands for electronic learning. This training is typically done through some combination of web-based training modules, distance learning, and virtual classrooms. The e-learning system may also be able to process enrollments, test and evaluate participants, and monitor their progress. Now, as with anything, there are advantages and disadvantages, and e-learning is growing and growing all the time. So an advantage of e-learning is going to include the ability to deliver training to trainees anywhere in the world at any time. It's going to be able to provide cost savings and efficiency in the training administration. And another advantage is the use of self-directed, self-paced instruction and the ability to monitor trainees' performances and the controllable access for the training. Now, disadvantages with e-learning or computer-based learning could include relying on self-direction and self-motivation of your trainees in being trained, and it lacks that face-to-face contact with the trainer in a live sense. Now, another computer-based training that you may come across in an organization is that of Electronics Performance Support Systems, or EPSS. An electronic performance support system is a computer-based tool that seeks to improve user performance. Most often, an electronic performance support system is integrated with other software to provide the users or the trainees guidance as they interact with specific tools. An electronic performance support system kind of acts as a coach, guiding the trainees through the process. And the last delivery method I wanted to talk about is on-the-job training. Persons or people with job experience and skills are going to guide the trainees. A couple areas where you see this on-the-job training used specifically are with internships and apprenticeships. Now, most apprenticeship programs are in the skilled trades areas. And an internship, this is seen as an on-the-job learning sponsored by an educational institution as a component of an academic program. Now, the sponsoring school works with local employers to place the trainees in positions where they can gain experience that's related to their area of study. Now, one of the most important features of organizations today is that of teamwork. With team training, individuals work together to achieve a common goal. In this, we see various types of training. The first one I'll talk about is that of cross-training. With cross-training, teams training occur in which team members understand and practice each other's skills so that they are prepared to step in and take another member's place when needed. The other training we see here with teamwork is that of coordination training. Team training that teaches the team how to share information and make decisions to obtain the best performance as a team. And then we have team leader training. This is training in the skills that are necessary for effectively leading the organization's team. So not just being a team member, but knowing how to effectively lead a team. And those are great skills that are needed. When you can provide teamwork training, it's just going to help everyone come together and be able to see things in each other's shoes, and how that working together is going to help them achieve the organizational goals because they're going to have that common interest. Learning permanently changes behavior. For employees to acquire knowledge and skills in the training program and apply what they have learned in their jobs, the training program must be implemented in a way that applies what we know about how people learn. Effective training communicates learning objectives clearly. It presents information in a distinctive and in memorable ways to the trainees, and helps our trainees link the subject matter specifically to their jobs. Now keep in mind, employees learn best when training links to their current tasks. Employees also need a chance to demonstrate and practice what they've learned. Our trainees need to understand whether or not they are succeeding. A well-designed training helps people remember the content that was being delivered to them. When using written materials, they should have an appropriate reading level. Now, the reasons for poor transfer of information to the trainees may occur if the organization does not fully support the training activities in general, or the employee supervisor does not provide opportunities to apply their new skills. A lack of this knowledge transfer can also mean that employees have not learned the course material. The organizations might offer a refresher course to give trainees more practice and to help reinforce that information, especially if there's going to be a time lapse from when the training occurred to when they may get to use those skills. Another reason for poor transfer of training is that the content of the training may not be important to that person's job. Organizations are beginning to provide a strong combination of social and technical support for the transfer of training by setting up social media applications that promote learning. Now, after a training program ends, or at intervals during an ongoing training program, organizations should ensure that the training is meeting its objectives. Depending on the objective, the evaluation can use one or more measures that I'm showing here. Training programs should prepare employees to self-manage their use of the new skills and behaviors on their jobs. The trainer should have trainees set goals for using the skills or behaviors on the job, to identify conditions under which they might fail to use the skills and behaviors, and to identify the consequences, whether they're positive or negative, of using those skills. Employees should practice monitoring their use of the new skills and behaviors. When they are monitoring it, they are going to stay more invested, and they're going to keep using or thinking about that training. Now, a trainer should stress that learning to use new skills on the job is naturally difficult and will not necessarily proceed perfectly like they may want, but that the employees should keep on trying anyway. Trainers also should support managers and peers in finding ways to reward employees for applying what they have learned. Assessment of training also should evaluate training outcomes. That is, what, if anything, has changed as a result of the training. The relevant training outcomes are the ones that are related to the organization's goals for the training and its overall performance. Possible outcomes can include things like information such as facts or techniques and procedures that the trainees can recall after a period of time from their training. It could also include skills that trainees can demonstrate in tests or on the job. Trainee and supervisor satisfaction with the training program. Another possible outcome can include the changes in the attitudes related to the content of the training. For example, concern or safety for tolerance of diversity, or even a greater awareness of safety. Another outcome could be with the importance or the improvements in individual, group, or overall company performance. And then lastly, with applying the evaluation. This helps with future decisions about the organization's training programs. Organizations may identify a need to modify their training and gain information about the kinds of changes that are needed in the organization. One of the primary applications of offering employee training in our organizations is in the orientation process. The term orientation, really across almost every organization, is simply training designed to prepare our new employees to perform their new jobs effectively. They also need to learn about the organization through the orientation process and have the ability to establish some work relationships throughout this orientation. The objective of the orientation is to familiarize new employees with our rules, policies, and procedures here in the organization. Another aspect here is with onboarding. The onboarding process aims to prepare our new employees for full participation. And onboarding is a conscious attempt to get new hires to identify and connect with their new employer. Now, this can be different than orientation because it's ongoing, and it can be specific rather than general in regards to the job the employee will be doing. Now, we have this process that aims to prepare, and we go through compliance, clarification, culture, and connection. During this onboarding process, we want the new employees to understand company policies, rules, and regulations. We want them to understand their job performance expectations. When it comes to culture, we want them to understand the company history, the traditions, the values, and norms and mission of our organization and our organizational culture. When they do this, when they understand this onboarding or bringing them into the environment is only going to make things much smoother. Our employees need to be able to understand and develop working and interpersonal relations and how those relations help everyone be better and help us achieve those organizational goals. An example of an application of training is when businesses include diversity programs. Now, with diversity training, this is designed to change employee attitudes about diversity and how we are all different in many ways, and that our differences can bring many benefits to our organizations. With our diversity training, we need to have our employees have and develop a need to respect and value diversity of all other employees. Our diversity training programs may focus on such things as behavior changes or constructive ways to handle communication barriers, conflicts, and misunderstandings that occur, as well as cultural immersion. Effective diversity training is going to effectively change or better an organization's culture. But this is just one example of training. There are all kinds of training. I just wanted to use this one as an example. But our training is going to help our employees through the onboarding process and orientation processes. It's going to make employees feel like they're part of the organization and understand the organization much faster. And our continual training of employees, when we've identified the needs that exist in an organization, and we carry out these various training programs are going to help our employees not only be better in their jobs, but help us achieve our organizational goals, stay competitive, and be able to make sure that we're continuously training ourselves to be new employees, to have greater skills, and to keep moving forward in the organization so that the organization can keep moving forward.